All right, we'll get started here in just a second. Welcome everyone to the Grit City Think and Drink. I'm your host, Jim Gowell. I'm a professor at the University of Washington in Tacoma. For those of you who are chiming in from elsewhere in the US or otherwise, welcome to, welcome virtually to Tacoma almost. It's been, obviously having this online is not as much fun as doing it at the pub, but we take advantage of it in this case, so I'm able to invite some awesome people from all over who wouldn't have the easy time of getting here otherwise. So might as well take advantage of this. So in a little bit, I'll introduce my friend and speaker, Jenny J. But just to give you a heads up, if you are new to the Grit City Think and Drink, this happens the second Tuesday of each month. So we have our speakers lined up all the way through 2021. Our next speaker is shown there on the slide, is talking about becoming Nisei, which is basically talking about the Japanese population that was in this region in the Northwest around World War II and sort of the problems that they had around the Second World War. So I hope you come and listen to Mary and Lisa talk about their stuff. And then in June, which isn't up there, Alex Miller is going to come and talk about masculinity in the time of Trump. So if you really want to hear something interesting, hopefully you'll come back in June to check that one out as well. I'll give you a little rundown. So after I introduce our speaker, she's going to give her talk. And then towards the end, we will when she's done, we'll give away some socks. So let's see if this shows. So the Grit City Think and Drink has swag. So as you can tell, we had t-shirts for a while, then there were hats, now we're to socks. Next time it's underwear. So hopefully you can collect all of these items and eventually outfit yourself completely. So hopefully you will join us. So to get those socks though, you're gonna have to be the first person to get a trivia question correct. It will be somewhat related to what Jenny's talking about today by my own standards. But we will also send a pair of Grit City Think and Drink socks to Jenny so that she can actually show these off back down there in LA or give them to whoever she wants. So after we give away the socks, then we'll do question and answer, and you're going to use your chat function. Hopefully by now you have chatted in Zoom or some other suitable thing. So down on your screen, you should see a chat button. If you click on that, you'll be chatting just to me and Jenny, and I will field the questions and feed them to Jenny, and you can play Stump the Speaker at that point and ask her whatever you like. I should also, before I forget, I should pay homage to my boss, the School of Interdisciplinary Arts and Sciences, or IAS at UW Tacoma, who helps support me in doing this stuff here. But hopefully you enjoy the talk tonight and you'll come and join us again. Make sure you get the word out to everybody else about this thing, second Tuesday of each month. And without further ado, I'll stop sharing my screen. And Jenny, you can share yours, and I will introduce our speaker. So for the last 18 years, Jennifer J. has been a professor in civil and environmental engineering at UCLA. She specializes in the fate and transport of chemical and microbial contaminants in the environment. Her research addresses a wide range of topics, including coastal water quality, environmental antibiotic resistance, and the role of environmental education in shifts towards diets with lower carbon footprints, which I'm sure that you'll explain to us more during her talk. She also directs the Center for Environmental Research and Community Engagement, a UCLA center that addresses community-based environmental research questions in underserved communities in LA. She founded Meals for the Planet, whose logo you saw, I think, up just a little bit ago, an organization with the goal of disseminating information on the connections between food and the environment. Jenny got her BS, MS, and PhD in civil and environmental engineering at MIT, which is where I got to meet her. And a little known fact that she did not put in her biography is that at one point, Jenny got paid to juggle at Faneuil Hall. So I hope you will welcome Jenny J. Oh, by the way, I should let folks know, I would like you to turn off your videos just to save some bandwidth, and then it'll kind of lock you out of doing the video. So if you don't mind turning off your video, that way we have plenty of bandwidth for Jenny and her talk. Thank you all very much. And Jenny, take it away.
Great. Well, Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. This is exciting. And thank you so much to Jim for inviting me. I wasn't at all surprised to learn that Jim was doing something as cool as this, because I have to say, back in grad school, Jim was just not only the cool kid, also just so kind, so smart, so outgoing, and would bring people together back then. So I'm not surprised that he is still up to that kind of great behavior. Okay, so we're going to talk about my favorite topic, which is stand up for the planet while you're sitting down to dinner. So as we've seen more recently, but maybe all of our lives, there's many things to stand up for and many important issues out there. And this is one that you can do while you are fighting for your other causes too. It's just something we do every day. So I'm really excited to share this with you. So first of all, I wanted to see the chat. Oh, maybe Jim can just tell me some of the things that come in the chat. If I ask you, what are some of today's most critical environmental challenges? And maybe Jim can tell me what people are saying. Or can I see the chat, Jim?
You should be able to, but I haven't seen anything yet.
Oh, okay, got it. I am not seeing it. Ah, sorry, I'm trying to get the chat open. Ah, okay. I haven't seen anything yet, but I actually paged forward and I wrote a bunch of them down. So, so here we go. Here are some major challenges facing society, and you may think of more and write them in there. But we have climate change at the top, of course. That's one that we think of first. But there are so many more challenges. So, of course, biodiversity loss, you're probably also aware, is a big issue. Land use change, freshwater use. So these are all major challenges. So which of these, if you'd like to write in the chat, you can, which of these do a consensus of scientists, or I should say one major consensus document would say are beyond sustainable limits? Which of these are beyond sustainable limits? Anybody want to type? Yes, I'm seeing climate change. Biodiversity loss. Okay, keep going. Well, that's enough to get us going for now. I want to show you next my favorite diagram. I know some of my students are here and my family's here too. Anyone who knows me is familiar with my obsession with this diagram. So it's called the Planetary Boundaries Diagram. And you may think you're just looking at a cartoon of the Earth with some colors on it, but it's actually a really quantitative framework for learning about how we take care of the planet. It's really, really fascinating. So it's a consensus document. It was actually first presented in 2009, and it's been updated. It's a dynamic way of thinking about stewardship of the earth. And what these authors did first was come up with this list of things we need to take care of if we want the earth to keep functioning properly for us. It's actually anthropocentric in a way. It's just we need certain services from the planet. And if we perturb its cycles too much, we won't get those services. So it's really about maintaining a stable biosphere that we need for us. So there's all these, I kind of wrote them in bigger letters, but it's basically these different processes that you see. And then they did so much more than that. Then they actually tried to take a first cut at quantifying the amount that you can perturb each one of these things. So each wedge of this pie graph, or each wedge of the pie, each triangle wedge is actually a graph. And what they did was they came up with their first guess at a planetary boundary. And the title of this paper was originally called The Safe Operating Space for Humanity, just recognizing that we are here, we're going to be tweaking all of these things. How much can we before we really will have consequences that we do not want? And so they made a safe limit, quote, safe limit, or a planetary boundary, it's called. And they adjusted the scale on each piece of the pie so that the safe boundary is the inner circle here. This blue ring that you see here is the safe limit. Then they went even further and they made an estimate of where we are. And so the two that were named, the climate change and biodiversity loss, it's called here biosphere integrity, are actually way beyond the limit, especially biodiversity loss. This is kind of the zone of uncertainty, but if it's beyond the blue boundary, it's considered beyond sustainable limits. Also, land use change, and check out nitrogen and phosphorus. You might not have known this, but these are way beyond sustainable limits. Okay, so really fascinating diagram because it really takes everything, pretty much every concern about the environment, and it puts it into one diagram, and it shows you how everything is connected. Actually, the boundaries depend on each other. The water boundary, of course, depends on the climate boundary. A word about the water boundary, it looks like it's below the sustainable level, but water is one that's very important at a local scale. So supposing you are a farmer trying to grow crops in an area where the water cycle has shifted and you are not getting the water you get, you wouldn't care that on a global level, we are maybe below the boundary, right? If you need water locally, you need water locally. So just a comment on water, it looks like it's below the boundary, but that doesn't mean we don't care about water. Okay. So this is kind of a table of contents that I use for my classes, because I get to teach classes where we go all the way around the circle and we talk about food and its relationship to all of the different planetary boundaries. And so today we can only cover a couple, but these are all my favorite topics pretty much. Yeah, so we've got, if you look around that circle and you think fresh water use, biodiversity loss, land use, you keep coming back to this idea of food being an important driver, being really significant. And this is actually exciting and it's good news in a way, in that we have a lever to push that basically improves all of these issues. The nitrogen, the phosphorus causing dead zones. We don't even get to talk about that today, but so important to keep our coastal oceans healthy. So, and that's nitrogen and related to agriculture. So we keep seeing food come up. And so then that makes us realize that food is a really good way to address all of these issues. But going beyond that, I really wanted to share this very recent paper. It's from November 2020, and it was in the journal Science. So it's a very prestigious paper. And it really lays out there, check out the title, Global Food System Emissions Could Preclude Achieving Our Climate Change Targets. And so this really says, so I want to show you this diagram because it's fascinating. These dotted lines are the food emissions. Are the carbon emissions, and these dotted lines are our total allotment from all sectors. What are we allowed to emit if we want to keep the climate to 1.5 C? It's obviously lower. And if we're okay going to 2 degrees C of change, then it's up here. So these are our limits from all sectors, okay, including transportation, industry, all of that. So our food systems alone are projected food-related emissions, just food alone. So you see, these is business as usual. We basically blow by the 1.5s. And so we get up near 2, just food system alone. So we really need to try these mitigation strategies. And talking about food waste, it's so important. Yields, efficiencies, eating the right amount of food, plant-rich diets, all of these strategies are needed. So I just really wanted to share that because it did make news for a good reason. It was completely in accord with all the other research. This isn't unique. It wasn't really groundbreaking, but they said it in a very clear way. So I wanted to share that. Back to our table of contents. I am only going to talk about 2 of them today, just in the interest of time. And the first one is antibiotic resistance. And for this, I immediately want to thank my amazing lab group. I get to work with the most inspired, inspirational, idealistic, hardworking students that there are. And so I just want to say thank you to them for doing all of this hard work. A little bit of intro on antibiotic resistance. It's a huge challenge facing society. It's Yeah, it's on the order of, climate change. It's major, major thing for us to be concerned about. And this is because we really depend on our antibiotics. Probably many of you have taken antibiotics, and it's really what gives us confidence in our medical system. So we don't really have to worry about small infections that are going to end up killing us, or something bothering us after a small surgery, something, mostly we're able to treat those things. And maybe some of you have had the experience of even having to switch antibiotics because one didn't work. That is basically happening more and more. And we are getting to the point, or we're at the point where we really need to worry about this, because CDC, the World Health Organization, are taking this really seriously, and even saying it's threatening the achievements of modern medicine. So that's not a place we want to be. And so this is already an issue. We already have many, many antibiotic resistant infections. So on the order of almost 3 million, this is just in the US per year. We already have deaths due to antibiotic resistance, and it's only projected to become worse. So how does this happen? It's really important to know it's a natural process. So say, number one, you've got a mix of bacteria, and suppose these purple ones have figured out, and by figured out, I mean they've acquired DNA that lets them resist the drug. So basically makes them stronger in the face of the drug. So those purple ones are going to live when there's some selective pressure. So when the drug is applied, the weaker ones die, the stronger ones live. We've heard this story before. Most of us are familiar with the idea. The stronger ones are going to reproduce. So that's 1, 2, and 3. In addition, something really fascinating that bacteria can do, they can actually pass their genes in real time. So 1 through 3 is called the vertical gene transfer because it takes generations. But number 4 is called horizontal gene transfer. So it's just in real time, the genes can pass from one cell to the other in a variety of ways, 3 different ways actually, but I won't worry too much about that. So both of those going together mean that our antibiotics kind of have a shelf life. We don't like to think about it, but when the drugs are developed, the resistance shows up. And the more the drug is used, the more the organisms that are out there can fight it, can resist it. And so drugs have a shelf life. And if you combine that with this is development of our drugs. And you can see it's really slowed for a variety of reasons. Some have to do with biology, only so many ways to kill a cell, right? So there's been a real slowing in new development. So this tells us we need to be really careful with our antibiotics use. So what is the biggest use of antibiotics currently? I won't use the chat too much, but I would have seen if you could guess it, but it's actually animal use. These numbers are hard to get. It's very elusive. These are from Johns Hopkins making these estimates. And this is from a few years ago, this particular one from 2011, but there is a more recent source that backs up these numbers. It's probably come down a bit, but it's still much more than half being used in animal medicine. And why? So this is really important. So when we use antibiotics for ourselves, we actually use it to treat disease, and we're pretty prudent about it. The doctors don't just prescribe them willy-nilly usually, and we take the whole course like we're supposed to make sure we don't promote antibiotic resistance. But in animal agriculture, I'm sure it was well-intentioned. A long time ago, people discovered that the animals could grow faster when they were given low doses. So the antibiotics are expensive. So they're definitely just given low doses because it allows them to be grown in conditions that none of us would agree would be optimal, right? We're all aware of that. But it allows them to grow in that kind of condition, and it promotes their growth. So that is why. But at low dose, that's exactly the wrong thing to do to control antibiotic resistance. It's actually the thing to do if you wanted to worsen it, because what you're doing is turning the guts of all these animals into a selective environment for those stronger bacteria. So antibiotic resistant bacteria are coming out of the animal. And here we go with some human waste graphics and then an animal waste graphics that just show, I don't know if that's drawn to scale, but you get the idea of it. We as civil engineers spend a lot of time thinking about, well, we as people care a lot about our human waste treatment. So we collect it, treat it, make sure it's shipped offshore or whatever, or treat it very well. There's a lot of animal waste out there, a lot. And it contains these antibiotic resistant bacteria. So about 6 years ago, I became interested in that and started working with students in California, collecting bacteria even that were in the air. If any of you have driven around California, you will know that sometimes sometimes the air does not smell so good. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Sometimes in California, you can really tell that there's either freshly manured fields or a feedlot or some other type of concentrated animal feeding operation. So I became curious what was in the air. So that was our first project, and my family helped me the first time and for the first few trips actually, and the students helped. What we did was collect bacteria by pumping air through a little bit of liquid that would capture all of the bacteria. And we then tested a whole bunch of them. We actually had to separate them all out. We made 1,200 different separate little cultures and tested them all by hand pretty much for antibiotic resistance with a lot of help from our undergrad volunteers and grad student volunteers. So between these two types of farms, we took 3 farms like this, 3 like that, tested every bacterium for resistance to the drugs, so different antibiotics. And we basically saw a really consistent story in that the bacteria in the air near the farms was better able to grow in the presence of drugs, which is not what you want. So it's basically showing off-site transport of antibiotic resistance. We also saw it near the manured fields. So then we became really curious about how people are impacted if they live near these fields, if they're smelling it all the time. How is their microbiome impacted? There is a lot of research on, well, I don't know, there's a fair bit of research on workers at farms showing that their microbiome, that changes and that their trends seen in their microbiome match what you see in the animals. So there is this association of microbiome resistance in the people and the animals. So there's an association, but there's really a critical gap in showing the actual causing of antibiotic resistance in the human microbiome following exposure. Okay, so we decided to address that gap by doing a project close to home, which is our surfer resistance project. This is Megan Rue, Dr. Megan Rue. She just finished her PhD on this topic, and she is a surfer herself, and really figured out that this would be an excellent way to study how someone could be surfing in clean water, and then the water could bring bad water quality, could bring pathogens, disease-causing organisms, antibiotic resistance, and impact the surfer. So it's a way to show a perspective. It's a way to do a perspective study. And so we focused on MRSA, which is a big public health challenge, and it was detectable at all of our beaches. So we decided to focus on that. And so this was a lot of work. So again, this project relied on many, many volunteers, and also we got to collaborate with the local environmental groups who helped us. So I'm going to just go through quickly. It was a lot of morning sampling and recruiting of surfers, and we tested all the samples for DNA. We extracted DNA so we could test for a bunch of genes, and we did culture-based testing too. So just 2 results I want to quickly show, and I'll move on. The bacteria, the MRSA, came when the rain came. So that helped us understand the source. the immediate source. We still want to understand more about the ultimate source. But this is our main result. Surfers that surf during wet weather were 6 times more likely to be colonized by MRSA compared to our control group. So there's many other reports to tell you about, but I'm going to move on because I know we're all interested in dietary carbon footprint. So that is our next topic. And so here we go. Big fraction of our greenhouse gases come from food. So let's talk about a couple main points. So the first one is that when we eat food, we gain calories from eating, you know, any of these fruits, veggies, grains, legumes, whatever it is. Those calories do come with a footprint, a pesticide, nitrogen, land use, carbon, whatever it is, comes with a footprint. And so that's fine. So we need to be concerned with that. When we grow food and feed it to, so in this case, this cow, many of those calories, the vast majority of the calories we don't eat. So they go, you can imagine it's got to grow the animal, and then the animal walks around or keeps warm, or just it's lost in the waste. So just the metabolism of the animal over time uses up a lot of the food. It kind of makes sense, right? So we only see a small fraction of the food or the calories that the cow got. Also, certain farm animals do produce methane. We can talk more about that later because it's a big topic. But basically, it means that certain types of animals do have a heftier footprint. Okay, so hopefully you have a paper and pen handy. I forgot to tell you to try to get that. If you can do this in your head probably, but if you can jot down, you'll get some real numbers and it'll be interesting. You can tell me in the chat how you did. I want you to do a little calculation since I love working with numbers. I'm going to show you in a minute the numbers associated, not just per gram, but per serving of these different foods. So we can make a low carbon footprint sandwich together based on the principles that we were just talking about. These would be low carbon footprint foods. And so if any of you have paper and pen, maybe you can do this. I wanted you to make a table where you list the foods that you like from that slide, which I'll show again, and the number of servings. And then I'm going to show you the carbon footprint of all of those ingredients per serving. And you can do a little multiplication and a little addition. So it would be fun if you got it. So what we're going to do, it's like this. 2 slices of bread would look like that. And so I'm just going to pause for a second to give some of you, if you're feeling like you want to do this, you can think about it. Somebody want to do PB&J, maybe a burger, some avocado, or maybe a hummus sandwich. So hopefully, all right. Chris loves PB&J, me too, actually. So Chris, how many tablespoons of peanut butter do you usually use on your PB&J? 3, okay. And how many tablespoons of jelly? 1, okay, not much jelly. All right, so what Chris is gonna do is similar to this. I did a hummus sandwich here, but you just kind of write down and then you go back. So now I'm gonna show you the numbers. Okay, in black font, here are these big numbers, well, not big numbers. here are the numbers. And so Chris would multiply 3 by 31. And then he would add on 27 and maybe 42 if he wants to make a 2-slice sandwich. There we go. And so there you go. Thank you, Chris, for doing that. Can you all see the chat? I'm not sure you all see the chat, but he's got 162. So I'm going to show you what I did here. Multiplied it through. Oops, what did I have? 270. So Chris's is 160. This hummus one's 270. Maybe somebody else can put in the chat if they did a burger, a bean burger, or an Impossible or Beyond. In case any of you are interested, it's very interesting to me that Beyond Burger and Impossible Burger just have the exact same carbon footprint, even though their analyses were done independently and carefully. Their processes are totally different. Okay, so Yashvi has 135 for black bean patty sandwich. Calories per item is also in my normal calculator. I didn't put it on here just to keep things simple, but I do have an Excel sheet that you're all welcome to have. I'll send it to you, and it has not only calories, but protein, fiber, a whole bunch of vitamins. And so I actually have a lab that will go along with it, where you can do your whole diet and figure out all of the nutrition and the footprint. So I'm happy to share that with anybody. It comes with a little to do. And okay, so we're looking at between 135 and 300. Okay, so I do need a few people to do the same thing. I left so hummus and the veggies, but we're going to put maybe some, we're going to get to compare. Some of these are non-ruminant. Ruminant products would be cheese, beef, and hamburger patties. So I need a couple people to write down some sandwiches. I mean, I have one going, but it's more fun if we see what you all like to eat. Or even if you don't like to eat it, maybe you're curious how much carbon you're saving by eating the first way versus this way. So Jim is going to do turkey, cheese, avocado, and bread. All right. And so I'm going to give you the numbers now. Ready? Okay. Wait, first I'm going to show you the table that I did. Check out the numbers, people. Okay. So, so write these in your chart and you can notice some cool things. And I wish we were in a room together because I would love to hear your observations and questions immediately about all of these numbers. So these are pretty well researched numbers. Like there are a lot of studies that go into these numbers, and it's not just one calculation. There's review papers and all that. But I'm sure I can't hear the sounds of shock over Zoom, but I know they're there because every time I do these numbers, I also myself get kind of shocked. Yeah, so double at In-N-Out is around 6,000. Okay. So yeah, so these are incredible numbers. This is why I've gotten so passionate about this, because there's so much scientific information on this. I'm telling you, so many papers, so many studies, so many PhDs, and just so many articles. And all the public learns about is kind of qualitative stuff, like, oh, maybe you need to eat less beef for the climate or for water, or just kind of qualitative suggestions. And there's no reason for that, because the numbers are what we need to know in order to make changes that we can be certain about. Because other people study, not me, but other people really study the psychology of behavior change. And people need to be sure. They need to know that if they're going to give up that kind of sandwich that they kind of really like maybe they grew up eating hamburgers and they really like it. In order to change that behavior, they really need to know it's going to make a change. And when you see paper after paper giving numbers, it helps you say, okay, I get it. This is going to make a difference, and I'm going to support this other thing that I want to take off, this company making an alternative or whatever. We're just more able to do those changes, because behavior change is hard, right? It's not easy. Some of you may be surprised. You were not together, so I can't see. But is anybody surprised that the cheese is higher than the ham? And, that's not something people expect. A lot of people might be vegetarian for the planet, which is good, actually. Vegetarian isn't all that different than vegan when you do out all the numbers, unless you subsist on cheese. It's very beneficial. And flexitarian too and even climate carnivore is a diet. It's a real thing. Climate carnivore means you eat all the foods really except the cheese and except the ruminant products. You walk away from the ruminant products only, because that's where the climate bang is. Okay, so we've got a turkey hummus, $6.85. So, that's double the other, but it's a 1/10 of the In-N-Out double, right? It's a 1/10 of it. so you see what difference that you can make. All right, I'm going to keep moving here because I really want to put these numbers into context for you. So we've done a few numbers, so I just put some typical ones up here. But as we saw, we could get to 6,000. All right, and so I'm going to put this is just showing you that all these different foods have their different carbon footprint, and it's well known. This is just in case you were curious about some other foods that were not in my sandwich list. Oh, and one thing, so here we go. We see the cheese, the lamb, and the beef are all larger. And so a lot of people ask, and I have a whole section on it if anyone really wants to dig into it. A lot of people are curious about grass-fed beef, pasture-raised beef. And so I looked into this pretty carefully a bunch of years ago, actually because my husband really was loving his burgers. He loves burgers. So I was looking whether these happy cow, sustainable beef was really better. And check this out. So this is now another review study. Every dot is a separate calculation, separate carbon footprint. And you can see the bars show the range. And you can see here that the two main ways of raising cattle would be a pasture and a feedlot. Feedlot needs its food shipped in, and pasture is eating grass. Most cattle actually face a combination. So even if they look like they're happy out in the hills, they're headed toward the feedlot. Okay, that's the way it occurs mostly in California anyway. Okay, so what you see here is really surprising to most people because the pasture, it kind of looks more environmentally friendly, and it is in certain ways, but the carbon footprint is not better. And that's really surprising to people until I just have to tell you this one thing, because when you learn it, it makes so much sense. When you feed a cow grass, it's actually its natural diet, and its body naturally produces methane. So eat grass, produce methane. It's not trying to change the climate. That's just what it does, right? It makes methane. If you feed it corn and soy, which is not what it's supposed to eat, it actually produces less methane because that's not its natural diet. And so those foods take carbon footprint. They have a carbon footprint to reach the animal, but then the animal gives off less. So I'm not promoting feedlots, far from it. I'm just saying you don't get a free lunch, no pun intended, but you don't get, it's not so easy as to just say pasture raised is better. It doesn't work that way. Okay. I do just one final thing we need to do. I need to put these numbers in context for you because we talked about 200, we talked about 6,000, and I know you all know how like the relative significance, but you probably don't have a strong concrete sense of what a carbon dioxide equivalent really is, like how important is 1 or 100 or 1,000. I'm sure you don't, I didn't either. And so I was trying to contextualize these numbers for a paper and decided to put it in terms of the Paris Climate Accord. And so the way those numbers are written, it's a reduction that's required. So you take what you would normally be producing and you have to cut it by a certain amount. Okay, so the US has to cut by actually 325 to 447. 325 is actually the more recent number, and that actually even makes our numbers even more significant, but just giving the whole range just for kicks. So we have this huge number, which also may not make sense to us yet, but guess what we can do? If you take that number, you divide it by all of us living in this country, and you divide it by days in year, drum roll please, this is exciting you guys, look what happens. It's 3,000 grams of CO2 per person per day for the to meet the Paris Climate Accord. So that's kind of super exciting. And so I really want to hear, oh, I'm so glad that Carrie Ann asked this because I have a whole section on that now I'm going to make time for because I needed to stop now, or I needed to stop soon to allow time for questions, but Carrie Ann's question we're definitely going to get to right away. Okay, so we have 3,000 grams of CO2 per day, And so we can all do this basically through other ways too. So transportation, you can bike, take public transit, conservation of energy, consuming less, thrifting, and diet. So all of these ways are ways that we can be more environmentally friendly. And diet shift is actually recognized by the IPCC, that's the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, recognizes all these different diets for their total potential, demand side mitigation potential for all of these different foods. And so you see here just all of them listed. So I won't go into too much detail because I want to touch on one topic and then I'll get to Carrie's question. So what we've been doing at UCLA is teaching about all this stuff, food and environment. And for a while, I'm not doing it this quarter, but I've been measuring the students' dietary choices from surveys, just with that they fill out before and after the class. And I also bug a bunch of control classes just to find out what the campus is doing. And I also collaborated with colleagues at 3 other universities and also who taught the similar materials and also surveyed their classes. And we basically showed statistically significant difference in between our intervention group, which is the green, and our comparison group. Our control group is in the empty bars, and we see a big difference. And so our students that we taught basically decrease our carbon footprint. And here's the sad thing, the students, these were freshmen. This particular study was freshmen. They kind of increased their carbon footprint because of all the availability of a lot of meat products. And so this was the distribution of carbon footprint of the freshman diet. They actually weren't eating that much red meat, but the footprint really shows. So this is the carbon footprint distribution among all of the different food groups. So that was really interesting. So that's why you get a lot of bang for the buck. And so if you do out the math, here's the thing. The students were making pretty small changes. It was like a serving less a week of red meat. And they were also eating more vegetables and good things like that. But if you do out all the numbers, it's actually 30% of the target that the US would need to do could be met by the modest shift that we observed in the class just by teaching. And so it kind of gets you excited because it's possible that society decides that people need to learn certain information, like this is required for high school graduation, or most colleges might teach this, whatever. Then you can imagine educating the population so that they kind of understand the implications of their food. Maybe they understand it quantitatively and they are able to make the shift. Okay, and so I was going to end here, and except that I do have some slides prepared for Carrie's question. So this one about grass-fed beef. So I have a couple more slides, but hopefully this is okay. Normally I would do this interactively, like I would show the different types and say which one's better for certain environmental. So I won't belabor this because I know we have a lot of great questions to get to. So I kind of do this as a quiz show, but basically people sort of intuitively feel that the pasture is better for even disease risk. Like you can imagine a pathogen making its way through this farm because the animals are basically exposed to their waste. And then even if it's in the meat, it gets mixed with all the other meat really quickly and it's hard to track. Also animal ethics. Most people don't agree with how animals are raised in farms. So most people would agree, or maybe the vast majority, that the animal ethics in concentrated animal feeding is not ideal. And so here's the trick question, is the climate mitigation. And so here's the thing. First of all, I just want to show more numbers. These are many studies. So this is a review paper that showed many. This is global warming potential numbers. So these are all the different numbers, and they broke it down all over the world. So this is just cattle and land being raised all over the world, just having pretty high numbers. If you remember, beans were like 1 kilogram per kilogram poultry, pork, 5, 7. I didn't go in detail into these numbers, but this is what they would be. And then I showed that one. So it's because of the methane. So here's the thing. There is this idea put out there that carbon sequestration can be increased by cattle grazing. And so here is one graph that did track that. And there's a couple things to learn. So this right here, the y-axis is the carbon, percent carbon in the soil. So this is what Carrie Ann is talking about, regenerative farming, where you're counting on the carbon in the soil increasing, because when the carbon in the soil increases, like it's doing here, it's increasing, it's drawing that out of the atmosphere. And so we basically have a carbon sink. So this number going up means carbon sink. Okay, but does it keep going up and up and up? You see here, no. It reaches an equilibrium that if you would still have the cows grazing, you're not getting that benefit anymore. So it is limited. It's also reversible if you have drought or fire or just different land use management. It's reversible. And the other thing is it's limited, because if you start way down here in depleted land, you have all this to gain. So this is where the controversy comes in. And there's real controversy on this topic, because whenever there's big money involved in any industry, there's also really well-intentioned people. There's like really great cattle farmers who are trying to do the right thing. And they're working hard on ways to do it better. And so it's an active area of research and people are trying. But here's the thing, that it's often the case that there isn't that much potential to increase to what that environment would hold. And so this is kind of what those are kind of the three issues with it. One main point of controversy was how much soil carbon potential is there even? Like if you were to optimize everything, how much could you? And there's debate about this. So I just showed one just to show that it's something people study. And so sometimes when there's controversy, it's really good to go to the really good journals like Science and Nature. And so basically this one focused on not just red meat, but it's focused a lot on red meat, but it basically showed that, you can get an improvement with regenerative farming, but it's not like it's here yet. Like the technology is not here yet. And we need to address climate now. So we should still keep trying, everybody should do what they can. Everybody should be doing what they can, but it's not like it's there yet. And that it's okay to just keep on having as much ruminant product as we want to. Okay, so that was a question, but I'm up for more questions.
Awesome. Well, let's give a virtual round of applause for Jenny, even though I'll allow you guys to turn your cameras on if you would like. Let's see if I can figure that out, Jim.
Hey.
Our video. Oh, you should be able to now. Okay. So before we get to questions, and I already have some that are waiting in the hopper from folks that asked things earlier, but we want to give away some free swag. So for your chance to win the limited edition Grit City Think and Drink socks in purple, which of course is the colors of University of Washington, but nobody, if you're in California, you don't have to let anybody else know that. They're just a cool purple color. So if you want to win, here's the trivia question that's related to what Jenny was talking about. It turns out that somebody counts the number of cows in the US. I don't know if they actually name them all, but how many cows are in the US? How many? So chat me your answer. Make sure you don't send it to Jenny, send it to me, because she probably knows the answer, but I'm the only one monitoring. We have a 36 million from somebody. At least 7, nice answer, but closest is gonna win this one. 24 million, other guesses, 100 million, 5 million. Anybody else? 1850, sorry, these are millions. 8 million, Well, from those who have guessed, it looks like Joan Waldrop is the closest. So Joan, the USDA says it's 94 million. So there are 94 million cattle in the US from what the USDA says. So if you're wondering, that's just in this country. So Joan, for you to get your free socks, I will send them to you, because who knows, you might be in California. I'm not going to drive them down for now. So what you need to do, since you're only chatting to me and Jenny, if you can chat me your mailing address and what size socks you would wear, I will get those socks in the mail to you, and you will have your Grit City Think and Drink socks to show off to everybody in your neighborhood. So congratulations to Joan. All right, so we've given away the freebies. Let's get to the questions. So there was an early question from some guy named Joel, who actually wanted to know what did the feedlots or the different ranchers think of you and your students showing up with monitoring agents outside of their borders?
Right. So the first time we tried this project, we actually accidentally, for real, went inside the borders of the very large farm and we're monitoring. And no, they did not like that. So that was a very, it's a big memory in my life because it took a couple hours, and yeah, we did.
Excellent. Well, Chris and I were chatting on the side about, I once got stuck in I-5 over, I guess it's Harris Ranch. It was during summer and traffic just stopped. So I was actually on the overpass over this gigantic feedlot. And I can attest to the fact that I'm pretty sure I was tasting antibiotic resistance in my car because it was over 100 degrees, so we couldn't actually close the windows without dying in there. So
oh my God,
that was going on. So if you want to see what Jenny's talking about, go down I-5, middle of Central Valley. There's this, you can't miss it. There's just a whole lot of cattle that you're going to be driving over. And the smell will tell you it's coming quite a ways before you get there. So it's one of the bigger feedlots around, from what I know.
Yep, absolutely. Oh, I wanted to answer the one, someone asked about antibiotic resistance through dietary change, because we actually looked into that a little bit. So you can support, I mean, you can obviously, if you're not eating animal products, then you're not supporting the businesses that are using antibiotics. But in case some of you are interested, if you are buying chicken, we actually found, so we did a study of the resistance in E. coli for different kinds of chicken, either conventional or ones that were even selling themselves as no antibiotics. And then the special, very specialized, humane, family owned. And if you can see here, there was a difference when we got to, so susceptible means not resistant. So green is what you want. And the really fascinating result was that the chicken, regular chicken and no antibiotics were actually the same for the both antibiotics. Anyway, little fun fact then, I don't know if that's a fun fact, but it was Mary's chicken and Murray's chicken that were the only ones that made a difference. So.
Well, it's not so fun since I just snarfed down a chicken sandwich in between while you were talking. So now I'm gonna have to find Murray and Mary's chicken. So Joan actually asks, for the student surveys, how long was it between the baseline measure and the follow-up with that education response that you saw?
Great question. So the first study we did was 6 months because it was actually a year-long course. So we had multiple quarters with the students. So we had 6 months with them. But the interesting thing was I then did a much smaller intervention, just 1 quarter. So it was 3 months and just 10 hours, 1 hour per week. So it's my freshman seminar. And that one had basically the same difference. So we didn't need all 6 months and a full class to reach people. We definitely reached them. The thing that we haven't done is follow up. So I have not followed up on these. I still could do that and maybe be a separate paper. I didn't want to wait to publish the results, but it could be that the effect goes away. I don't know.
Cool. Meg wants to know, why is the carbon footprint of seafood so high?
Oh, yeah, no, that's a great question. It's actually hugely variable. And if any of you, oh, maybe I can get some plugs on my Instagram. If you go to @meals4planet, @meals4planet, one of my posts has so I put some science up there, and that's my best, the best reference I've seen. Some of them are very, very high, like livestock, like the ruminant livestock. So why is that? I'm assuming just that all of the shipping, and so it has to do with the production method and then processing. Oh, and farmed fish is actually fed land food. Right? So we are tied into the land as well with farmed fish. And that's more than anyone would expect. A lot of the diet of farmed fish is actually feed crops that you go to livestock's actually feeding a fish, which is surprising. Or they're fed smaller fish, but there's processing involved in all of that. So yeah, that's something I don't know a ton about, but that's why I refer you to the blog or to the Meals for Planet, plugging myself. So I'm referring to that because that has the citation info, and then you could get to that paper. It's by Hilborn, and it's just one of the entries on there. So then you can see, because it's fascinating, it breaks it down by fish, by the type of fish.
I had a question for you. So with the numbers that you were giving, did that include transportation costs, or is that sort of taking that out of the question?
And so no, those are out of the scope. So these are to the farm gate. So these are to farm gate. And so the scope of the calculation changes from study to study sometimes. So sometimes you have to be, well, you always have to be careful and see what the boundaries are of the calculation. So the numbers I've used, yeah, they don't do transportation. Sometimes I do transportation calculations because they're known. And it's actually interesting because if stuff is transported cold, it actually has a higher, the food miles cost more carbon. And if it's frozen, it's even more. So it matters if stuff gets to be ambient versus refrigerated. And it's all known per mile, per pallet is how the numbers are given. So I did a calculation out for my homemade guacamole versus buying it. And it was basically a doubling when you take into account the plastic container was 270 grams per container, just little information there. So it's like around the peanut butter, around the hummus sandwich is the plastic container. And then around the same actually for the transportation calculations that I had done. But yeah, you have to make a lot of assumptions for how far all of your ingredients are traveling. So yeah, that's an excellent question. That's an add-on.
Excellent. Got another question. Here's a new source of protein. So how do insects compare as a protein source from a carbon perspective? I have had cricket chips now. I have not yet had a cricket burger.
Right. It is very efficient. I wish I had the number right in front of me. I could try to get it to you. I don't have the number, but I know it was very low for low carbon emissions per gram of protein. It's low.
Cool. Especially if it's cicadas, which I guess are really in big supply this year. So if you guys want some cicada burgers, I think it's really cheap and low carbon footprint.
You haven't tried that one though?
I haven't had cicadas yet. As a kid, I actually used to feed them to my dog because they came out when we lived in at that time. So my dog likes them. So maybe they'll work as pet food. So we're almost out of time, but I'll ask one more question. Is there a difference between organic and non-organic fruits and vegetables in terms of carbon emissions?
Oh,
from Leanne.
It's not huge. There's a little bit on that. Wait, so I don't even want, that's a little, I should know that. I've read a little bit on it, but not the latest. And I don't want to say the wrong answer. So I'm so sorry.
Gotcha. Well, it's good because that means somebody got to stump the speaker today. So, but hopefully if you're going to check out, maybe Jenny will take a look at that on her Instagram account, and you can check that out later. Maybe she'll add something up there that you can learn the answer to that later on. I might have to actually join Instagram just so that I can check out Jenny's Instagram stuff. So Let's hear it, well, sort of. Let's hear it or show it for Jenny, our speaker today. Thank you very much for chiming in. And since I know that you're not actually in California, that it's quite late where you are. So thanks for sticking around for us and giving us our great talk.
Thanks for having me. This was so fun. Thank you,
Awesome.
Jim, and thank you, everyone.
Yeah, and it was great to see you again. It's been a long time. So, and great to see everybody tonight. So please join us. Second Tuesday of every month. The next talk is talking about the experience of Japanese Americans during World War II. So I hope you'll come and check that out. And we got lots more fun talks coming up for the year. So if you want to find how to get to these, go just Google UW Tacoma. So sorry, UW Tacoma. I always forget that people don't know what a dub is. So UW Tacoma, Grit City Think and Drink, and you will find the schedule and the links to all the talks, and you can come check them out. So also, if you have friends that wanted to check this out, this recording will be up in probably a week or so, and lots of past ones are up there already. So if you want to speak up, check out some of the speakers beforehand, you can see them as well. So thank you all. Thank you, Jenny. Everybody take care. Have a wonderful, hopefully COVID-free time. And we will see you all hopefully in May. Take care. Bye, folks.
Bye, everyone. Yeah, thanks, Jim. That was so fun.
That was a blast. Thank you.
All right. I think I will head to bed.
You should. Take care.
Take care.
Joel,
Bye.
Nice to meet you or see you, sort of.
Yeah,
Take care.
Joel and Ellie. Joel, Ellie, and my brother in Thailand and his husband Mint are there, but they don't have their camera on.
Oh, wait. I can let people, hang on. I will let people say hi. You can, wait, how do I do that? Must figure out. Unmute themselves. You can unmute yourself now.
Hey.
Okay, hey. So Jim, great to meet you. Jenny, that was a great talk, I must say. So good. We really enjoyed it.
Thanks, sweetie.
Yeah,
and this one sounds good too, the Japanese internment camp. I definitely want to go to that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was
I'm a little
very
scared
well
about the
moderated.
masculinity post-Trump thing. I'm not sure exactly what I'm a little scared of what that's going to show, but
that sounds good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But so we should get together, you know, Mindy, since Mindy, as you heard, was just down in LA visiting her mom and her brother down there. We'll be down there, I'm sure, many times.
We'd love to have you over for dinner and hanging out. So
That's
definitely keep in touch.
As long as you're not allergic to cats.
I have two that are, you can't see them because I got my virtual background, but they're actually been dancing around behind my head actually while I've been doing this whole thing. So
there's one of mine.
I have two that usually Zoom bomb me by showing their butts right on my shoulder in front of the camera. So
that's funny.
Nice.
You should ask Jenny what the feedlot owners did to her. You know, they actually did a citizen's arrest and they called the sheriffs and all that kind of. It was a lot more fun than she let on.
And Jim, it was Harris Ranch. It was Harris Ranch, but I didn't want to.
Yeah, wow. I can imagine. I feel like you don't need to be very close to Harris Ranch to pick up the signal from that place. So.
No, but you also can't tell where it starts and where it ends because it's huge.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
I didn't mean to trespass, believe me.
Yeah. Well, that's funny because I didn't know that you also had the cops calling you, because I had the cops call on me when I was doing work at Spy Pond in Arlington. So
oh my gosh, seriously?
Just as we were sampling in the dark for a storm event, and of course it's the middle, everybody's around there. So yeah, the cops got called on us while we were out there.
Oh, that's funny.
So there you go. We have that in common.
Yep.
That's right.
Okay, good night, you guys.
Bye, everybody. Take care. Bye, Jenny.
Good night.
Take care.